Welcome aboard the National Geographic Venture. We are off on an expedition through the San Juan Islands, the Salish Sea, and southern British Columbia. The Venture is a cutting-edge platform for natural history exploration. We'll explore the coasts, islands, and the bays of the Pacific Northwest's vast inland waterway. When we reach the edge of our ship's abilities, we'll go further, exploring by zodiac, and further again by getting right down to the water's edge in our fleet of kayaks and stand-up paddleboards. We will explore afoot through the world's largest temperate rainforest. We will visit some of the famed cities and towns of this region. There we'll dive deep into the unique history and thriving culture. Along the way, we'll seek out wildlife and spectacular scenery as our natural history staff uncover stories and make memories that will last a lifetime. The Salish Sea combines Puget Sound, the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and the Georgia Strait into a vast and intricate waterway. Its 6,900 square miles encompass rich waters and hundreds of islands, bracketed by three of the great cities of the West.
This afternoon we're making our first landing in our explorations of the Pacific Northwest and the coast of British Columbia here in Desolation Sound. Several of us have chosen a little possibly more adventurous outing for this afternoon of a hike through this part of the temperate rainforest. It's a very narrow ribbon of a forest ecosystem that covers all the way from Northern California all the way up to South Central Alaska. In this part of the temperate rainforest, we're going to be seeing today a lot of red cedars, as well as Douglas fir and some western hemlock. A rainforest, as its name implies, is shaped, has evolved under regular precipitation. In some cases, well over 100 inches of precipitation annually might fall along the shoreline here. And that precipitation is falling on what was once bare bedrock, scraped clean by glaciers thousands of years ago. And this bedrock now holds a relatively thin layer of soil, what we call an organic soil. It's partially decomposed material over the course of thousands of years have built up, supporting and harboring some of the largest trees and some of the richest tree life in North America. Every time I walk into and get underneath the canopy, to me it's just this, it's a very ethereal, sort of mythological type of environment to be in. It has this Tolkien-esque quality to it. Like you can see how folklore about forest creatures and fairies and magical, animals and whatnot, because it is just such a powerful place and a very serene environment to find yourself in.
The waters of the Salish Sea are full of life.
Our dive in Desolation Sound was really unusual. The waters there are shallow and they warm up a little bit, so they're just a few degrees warmer than the rest of the surrounding waters. This brings a plethora of unusual life into diveable range. We only went to 80 feet, but we found all kinds of fascinating creatures. Everywhere, the watchful eyes of lingcod kept track of us and escorted us from anemones, different crinoids, feather stars. Finally, the moon jellies.
So today we're in Alert Bay, British Columbia, which is a predominantly native village on Cormorant Island. We have come to the Umista Cultural Center to see a collection of old meaning turn of the century from 18 to 19, masks and dance regalia that were confiscated by the Canadian government, and it's taken them 100 years to get it back. But Umista means restoration, and it's named that because these things were restored to these people by the Canadian government. You know, I hesitate to use the word sacred, but to these people, I guess there's no other word to use. They are sacred. They are the stories of their origins, the stories of their ancestors, stories of various trials that they went through on their travels through Earth, and they're precious. We're going to go up to the big house, and I don't know how to describe that other than it's really huge house. What we're going to see is the kind of thing that happens at a potlatch. But what we're actually seeing is young people being trained to take their place in a real potlatch. So what we're seeing is not a real potlatch, which is one reason why we're able to take photographs. But these young people have the opportunity, because we're here, to actually perform for other people. That's something that doesn't happen often, because they have to learn the songs, they have to learn the dances, but to actually perform them is a big deal. It's kind of like having a real dress rehearsal instead of just always practicing. So it's kind of a big deal for us to get to see this. It's certainly a big deal for these kids.
As we were traveling north through the Strait of Georgia, we came across a group of humpback whales.
We saw the whales at quite a distance. They were diving a lot and their tails were coming up. And then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 appeared right next to the ship.
One unique thing about humpbacks is that each one has a unique fluke print, like a thumbprint, that identifies that whale to scientists.
I was able to get very close-up photos of the whale's tail as it was diving. And so when I get home, I'll be able to actually find out who that whale was and what its name was, age, and all kinds of things. So it's pretty exciting to me.
Humpback whales are some of the most charismatic whales, and it's always fun to see them.
Whoa! Here it goes again.
We're going to be exploring a lot of Wallis Island. It's a pretty small island, so we'll probably be able to go all the way around it if we want to, and maybe get to see our hikers on the other side. Yeah, but it's a really beautiful place, and we got a nice sunny day to explore it. Yeah, isn't this tree beautiful? These are madrone trees, or madronas, the red peeling bark with the green bark underneath, and that bark can actually photosynthesize. So the bark, after it peels away, after the outer layer, the red peels away, you can see the inside is slightly green tinged, right? Because it has chloroplast in there. So it's just that bark that's right inside that peeling outer layer. My favorite thing about all these islands down here is this weathering pattern that they get. It's called honeycombing. And you can see it in a lot of places where it does look like a honeycomb or maybe like a bee's nest in there, in the rocks. And they're still not 100% sure how this process happens, but basically, the running theory is that salt water splashes onto the rocks, and when that water evaporates, the salt crystals remain, and they start to erode little pockets. And then over time, you get these deep erosion patterns that are really gorgeous. You can see the tide line pretty perfectly with those barnacles that are all growing on the rocks. All these little white dots are barnacles. And this is a great fun fact. The barnacle has the largest penis to body ratio of any animal. Yeah, it's good to know. Their penis is like 10 times longer than the length of their body. The harbor seals find the most uncomfortable rock to lay on and just kind of sprawl.
Today we are in Victoria, Canada. This is the capital of British Columbia and located in the southeast corner of Vancouver Island. It's one of the oldest cities in the West Coast. Thousands of visitors are drawn each year to view its famous architecture and explore fascinating museums and gardens.
So today we're on a secret garden tour. We're going to be traveling along scenic roads along the waterfront to some of Victoria's most spectacular private and public gardens. So right now we're visiting the garden of Lily Maxwell. And Lily, in this temperate Mediterranean climate near the water, has created a garden that has things in bloom and of interest 12 months of the year. So this is a garden that was selected as Canada's #1 residential garden. It's a deeply layered garden. She's got trees, she's got shrubs, she's got perennials, ground covers, and all under the canopy of tall native conifers. From this garden, we're going to cross the road and we're going to see another private garden that is a waterfront garden. And it was also created by Lily, who has become one of our leading garden landscapers. And then we are going to carry on to Government House, which is the residence of the Lieutenant Governor, who's the Queen's representative to the people of British Columbia. And there we're going to tour gardens, all of which have been created by volunteers. So over 140 volunteers twice a week work in the gardens, and there they supply the plants, they do the maintenance, the planting. We've got herb gardens, rose gardens, mixed perennial gardens. And everywhere we go through the tour, we're seeing the Garry Oaks. And the Garry Oak Meadows was where the First Nations, thousands of years ago, created Camas Meadows. So gardening has really been a mainstay in this community for time immemorial.
We're wrapping up our day here in Victoria with a reception at the Robert Bateman Gallery. Robert Bateman is one of the greatest living wildlife artists in the world. This is a great way to cap off our day in one of the West Coast's greatest cities.
Today we are in Friday Harbor, Washington, which is on the island of San Juan. And it's the largest town on San Juan Island. There's about 7,500 year-round residents here, and it's only serviced by ferry or float plane. I'm particularly happy to be here today. This is a great stop for me. I lived here for many years and have worked all over this island. I used to work on several different whale watching boats. Life on this island is really great. A lot of people will experience that island fever because you can only come and go via ferry or float plane. But I never experienced that. You know, it's such a slow way of life, and commuting via ferry to the mainland is very romantic. This is a place where people try to live close to nature, and due to that, you encounter a lot of people who are very proud to live on the island and proud of their community, proud of their neighbors and where they're from. They take great pride in these islands.
Okay, so I'm John. Welcome to Susha Island Marine State Park. Some people pronounce it Susia. Most of the local people call it Susha, right? So we're at one of the most northern islands in the San Juan Archipelago. Orcas Island is just off to the south a little bit. The border of Canada-US is just right out here. Apple trees like this don't grow wild here. We have wild crab apple, but not these kind of apples. So this is left over from when the island was settled by the Henry family right here. So you've probably seen this grass before. Maybe you've even eaten it. It's sea asparagus, and it's quite tasty. I like it. It's like salty, but sweet at the same time. Anybody want to try it?
Not after the ducks have been over it, sorry.
Most of this is shale, right? Which shale is an ancient mud sea bottom, but it's also mixed with a lot of this guy, which isn't from here. This is a glacial erratic, pulled down from Canada by a glacier, probably several hundred miles away from here, and then dropped here as the ice melted back and the glacier receded back to the north. So good evidence of glaciers being here about 15 to 18,000 years ago. Look at this big rock up here with all the white. It's old clams and different kinds of crustaceans that have used limestone to create their calcium shells, building it, and deposited in this mud bottom, got hardened, turned into a fossil.
I read a book a long time ago, Snow Falling on Cedars, and I had an idea of what the San Juans were, but each little island seems a jewel in and of itself.
Well, being kind of a novice at this, and not so much of an outdoors woman as my husband is, I have been more than pleasantly surprised, more adapting than I ever thought. I mean, I walked like 3 miles today in the rain forest, and I actually enjoyed it. It was beautiful.
It's been an extraordinary expedition through the Pacific Northwest coast. We hope that your voyage has been one of renewal and learning, and that you've had experiences that will create memories that will last a lifetime. The forethought of caring people who've come before us have protected this land and given us this landscape to enjoy. However, their work is not done. Our work is not done. The work is not done. If you've been touched by wild nature of this place, please consider that you are now an advocate for the Pacific Northwest. Indeed, you are now an advocate for all places wild and free. Vast connections tie us all together around the world, but they are nothing to the ties that hold together Earth's habitats, wild oceans, and flyways. In the grand tradition of explorers across the span of time, go forth, tell the world your stories with the goal of making the world more whole.